Jake Miller walked into the big hall where all the alien leaders met. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that glowed with soft light. He had been coming here for 3 years now, but today felt different. Today felt like the end of something. The hall was huge. 47 different alien species had their seats arranged in a circle. Some looked like giant bugs. Others looked like walking trees. A few looked almost human, but with strange skin colors or extra arms. Jake had learned to work with all of them, but lately things had been getting worse. He carried a small bag with his papers and computer. His uniform was clean and pressed like always. Jake believed in looking professional, even when the people around him did not want to listen. Kethfer was the first to speak. He was from a race called the Zephyrians. They looked like tall, thin people made of blue crystal. Their voices always sounded like wind chimes when they talked. "The humans have broken our rules again," Kethfer said. His voice carried across the hall easily. "They expand too fast. They fight too much. They do not follow the proper ways of doing things." Jake felt his jaw get tight. The Zephyrians had been complaining about humans for 2 years now. It did not matter what humans did right. They only talked about what they thought humans did wrong. The leader of the whole council was named Vel Thorn. He was very old, even for his species. His people had been running the galaxy for thousands of years. They looked like giant turtles that walked on 2 legs. Vel Thorn's shell was covered in marks that showed his age and wisdom. "Ambassador Miller," Vel Thorn said slowly, "your people have been warned many times. The older races have ways of doing things that have kept peace for a very long time." Jake looked around the hall. He saw faces that used to be friendly. The Altarian delegate, Yelessa, had praised human inventions just last year. Now she was looking at her computer screen like she did not want to meet his eyes. The Centauran ambassador, Palmer, had shared drinks with Jake many times. Now he was staring at the ceiling like it was the most interesting thing in the room. "Council leader," Jake said, trying to keep his voice calm, "humanity has followed all the rules you gave us. We check every planet before we settle there. We talk to any people we find. We only fight when someone attacks us first." The hall filled with sounds that were supposed to be laughter. Different species made different sounds. Some buzzed, some clicked, some made high whistling noises. But Jake could tell they were all laughing at him. Hex Tai spoke next. She was from the Rigel Collective. Her people looked like big spiders, but they were very smart. "You call it defense? Your people destroyed a whole Void Reaper fleet with weapons we did not know you had. You call that defense?" Jake felt anger rising in his chest. The Void Reapers attacked our colony ships. They were trying to kill innocent people. We protected our families by using weapons that scared half the galaxy, Vel Thorn said. "Your people are too violent. Maybe humans should think about staying home until you learn to be more ... peaceful." Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. He looked around the hall again. He saw nods of agreement. Species that had once been happy to work with humans now looked at them like they were dangerous animals. Dr. Lisa Carter was sitting behind Jake. She was the smartest human he knew. She had helped create medicines that saved millions of lives across the galaxy. She leaned forward in her chair. "Our inventions have helped everyone," Lisa said. "Our medicines have cured diseases that killed people for thousands of years. Our farming methods have ended hunger on 12 worlds. Yes, we know about your contributions," Vel Thorn interrupted. "But that does not make up for how dangerous your people are." Jake watched as the council prepared to vote. He had seen this coming for months. The whispers in the hallways. The way other ambassadors stopped talking when he walked by. The way his ideas were ignored in meetings. He knew what the vote would be before it. happened. 39 species voted to suspend humanity's rights in the Council. Only 8 voted against it. The humans could no longer vote on galactic matters. They could not expand to new worlds. Their trade ships would have to travel with alien guards watching them. Jake gathered his papers slowly. His hands were steady, but inside he was furious, not just angry, but hurt. Humans had given so much to the galaxy. They had shared their knowledge freely. They had fought to protect worlds that were not even their own. And this was how they were repaid. But Jake did not argue. He did not beg or make promises. He had learned something important about these aliens. They were afraid of change. They were afraid of anything new or different. They wanted everything to stay the same forever. Humans were not like that. Humans grew and changed and learned. Maybe that was why the aliens feared them. Jake stood up and walked toward the door. Behind him, he could hear the aliens talking among themselves. They sounded relieved, like they had just solved a big problem. They had no idea what they had just done. Jake pulled out his communication device as he walked down the hall. He entered a code that very few people knew. The message he sent was short, but it would change everything. Council has spoken. Recommend immediate implementation of Homeward Protocol. Confirm receipt. The reply came back in seconds. Confirmed. Phase 1 begins now. Jake smiled for the first time in months. The aliens thought they had won. They thought they had put humans in their place. They had no idea that humans had been preparing for this day for a long time. In the communications room of the Council building, Jake sent one more message. This one went to every human ship, every human colony, every human research station in the galaxy. It was encrypted with codes that would take the aliens years to break. The experiment is over. Come home. Then Jake walked out of the Council building for the last time. He did not look back. Behind him, the aliens continued their meeting. They were already making plans for how to manage the galaxy without human interference. They talked about bringing back old ways of doing things. They spoke of stability and order and tradition. None of them noticed that the human maintenance crew had quietly left the building. None of them saw that the human technicians who kept their computers running had not shown up for work. None of them realized that the human translators, who helped different species understand each other, had simply disappeared. The aliens were so busy congratulating themselves that they did not see the beginning of the end. In space, Captain Ben Rodriguez received Jake's message on board his cargo ship. He was supposed to deliver medical supplies to a colony that desperately needed them. Instead, he ordered his crew to change course for Earth. "Sir?" his navigator asked. "What about the medicine? People are dying." "Not our problem anymore," Ben said quietly. "Set course for home." All across the galaxy, humans were making the same decision. They were packing up their research. They were leaving their jobs. They were abandoning projects that had taken years to develop. The aliens had made their choice. Now humans would make theirs. Jake Miller walked through the spaceport toward his ship. In a few hours, he would be on his way back to Earth. Behind him, the greatest civilization in the galaxy continued its business, unaware that everything was about to change. The humans were leaving quietly. Soon, the galaxy would understand what that really meant. Captain Ben Rodriguez stood on the bridge of his ship, the Meridian, looking out at the stars. 3 days had passed since Jake Miller sent the coded message. 3 days since everything changed. The message had been simple. Just a few words that meant the end of humanity's role in galactic civilization. Homeward Protocol is active. Begin Phase 1 immediately. Ben had been waiting for this message for 2 years. Ever since the aliens started treating humans like dangerous children who could not be trusted. He had hoped it would never come, but he had prepared for it anyway. "All stop," Ben ordered his crew. Lieutenant Amy Foster, his navigation officer, looked confused. She was young and had joined the crew only 6 months ago. "Sir, we are still 6 hours away from Kepler Station. They need these medical supplies badly." "All stop, Lieutenant. Then set course for Sol System. Maximum speed." Amy stared at him. "Sir, I don't understand. The people at Kepler Station are dying. This medicine is the only thing that can save them." Ben felt a stab of guilt. He had met some of the colonists at Kepler Station. They were good people, families with children, farmers trying to build a new life. But they had made their choice when they voted to support the Council's decision against humanity. "Orders are orders, Lieutenant. Set course for home." The cargo hold of the Meridian was filled with medicine that could save thousands of lives. But it would never reach its destination. Neither would the supplies on the other 43 human ships that received the same message that day. Across the galaxy, the exodus began. Dr. Kate Morgan packed her research equipment while her alien colleagues attended a meeting about orbital mechanics. She worked quickly and quietly in the laboratory on Altair Prime. The fusion reactor project she had been leading was almost finished. In another month, it would have provided clean energy for the entire Altair system. Kate looked at the half-built Reactor 1 last time. The most important parts existed only in her mind and in the minds of her human team. The aliens could try to finish it, but they would fail. They did not understand the human approach to energy production. She sealed her research data in a quantum storage device and walked out of the laboratory. Her alien colleagues would not even notice she was gone until tomorrow morning. On Centauri Beta, Dr. Ryan Blake was doing the same thing. He was the head of the xenobiology department at the largest medical research facility in the sector. For 3 years, he had been working on a cure for Centauran bone wasting disease. The disease killed thousands of Centaurans every year, making their bones crumble like old paper. Ryan had been close to a breakthrough. Very close. The final trials of his treatment had shown incredible results. In 2 more weeks, he would have been ready to announce the cure. Instead, he deleted all his research files and walked out of the building. The cure would die with his departure. The Centaurans had voted to restrict human rights. Now they would live with the consequences. The same thing was happening on dozens of worlds. Human engineers abandoned construction projects. Human doctors left their patients. Human teachers stopped showing up to their schools. Human mechanics walked away from the machines they maintained. They did not make announcements. They did not argue or complain. They simply left. Commander Helen Torres had been working with the Rigel Defense Force for 5 years. She was their best tactical advisor. Her strategies had stopped 2 major pirate attacks and saved millions of lives. The Rigel military leaders trusted her completely. Helen submitted her resignation through the computer system at 3 in the morning. By the time anyone read it, she was already on a passenger ship heading for Earth. The defensive plans she had created were useless without someone who understood human military thinking. The Rigel High Command would discover this in a few weeks, when the pirates attacked again. On Earth, President Martha Collins stood in her office, reading reports from across human space. The recall was working perfectly. Every human ship, every human colony, every human outpost was responding to the call to come home. "How many have we brought back so far?" she asked General Paul Watson. 43,000 people in the first week, Watson replied. Colony ships, research teams, military advisors, trade crews, all of them are coming home. Martha nodded. Any response from the aliens yet? They're starting to notice. We're getting confused messages from various governments asking where their human workers went. But they don't understand the pattern yet. Martha walked to the window and looked up at the night sky. Thousands of human ships were returning to Sol System every day. But they were not just coming home to hide. They were coming home to build something amazing. "How is the construction project going?" she asked, ahead of schedule. "The automated systems are working better than we hoped. We should be ready for Phase 2 in 4 months. Phase 2 would change everything. But first, the galaxy needed to learn what happened when humans were not there to help. The aliens began to notice the problems within days. Sixtal was a shipping coordinator for the Altarian Trade Commission. His job was to make sure ships traveled efficiently between star systems. It should have been simple work, but suddenly nothing was working right. "The ships are taking twice as long to reach their destinations," he reported to his supervisor. "The same routes, the same cargo, but everything is slower." His supervisor, Administrator Cointel, looked at the data in confusion. "That makes no sense. The star charts have not changed. The navigation computers are working perfectly." What they did not know was that human ship captains had spent years finding better routes. They had discovered shortcuts through asteroid fields and ways to ride solar winds that cut travel time in half. But they had never officially recorded these improvements. They had shared the knowledge informally with other humans, but not with the aliens. Now that knowledge was gone, Captain Rexstar of the Zephyrian merchant ship Windcaller was experiencing this problem firsthand. His ship carried valuable crystals that needed to reach the Rigel system quickly. But after 7 days of travel, he was not even halfway there. "The human ships always made this trip in 4 days, his first officer said, nervously. Captain Susan Wright of the Northwest Passage bragged about it all the time. "Then we will follow the same route," Rexstar replied angrily. "We are following the same route, Captain. The exact same coordinates." Rexstar did not understand that Captain Wright had spent months mapping gravity currents and solar winds in this sector. She had found paths that did not appear on any official charts. It was knowledge that existed only in human minds, and now those minds were gone. On Centauri Beta, Chief Engineer Polvac stared at a control panel that might as well have been written in an alien language. The orbital defense platforms that protected the planet were failing, and he could not figure out how to fix them. The systems had been designed by human engineers 2 years ago, but they had built them using human logic and human problem-solving methods. The documentation existed, but it was written in a way that assumed the reader thought like a human. "The humans made this too complicated," Polvac complained to his assistant. "Why could they not use standard procedures?" What he did not understand was that the human approach was not complicated. It was elegant. The defense systems could adapt and learn and improve themselves, but only if you understood the human mindset that had created them. Lieutenant Commander Danny Parker had understood that mindset perfectly. He had been the one who installed and maintained the systems. But Danny was gone now, and his knowledge had gone with him. Similar problems were appearing everywhere. On Vega Station, the hydroponic farms that fed 50,000 people began to fail because the human agricultural specialists were gone. On Rigel 4, construction projects stopped because the human architects were the only ones who knew how to balance the needs of different alien species living together. The galaxy was starting to crack. In the Galactic Council building, maintenance crews discovered that several important systems were not working properly. The translation computers that helped different species understand each other were producing errors. The environmental controls were malfunctioning. The communication networks were becoming unreliable. It took 3 days for someone to realize that all the systems had been maintained by human technicians. The requests began arriving at Earth within 2 weeks. Carefully worded messages asking about technical difficulties and temporary staffing shortages. The aliens were not ready to admit they needed human help, but they were starting to worry. All of these messages went unanswered. Martha Collins. Read the reports with satisfaction. The galaxy was learning its first lesson about life without humans. But this was just the beginning. The real test would come when something truly dangerous happened. And according to intelligence reports, something dangerous was already moving toward the galaxy from the dark space between stars. The Void Reapers were coming back. 3 months after the humans left, Administrator Quintal stared at numbers that made no sense. Trade across the northern shipping routes had dropped by almost 40%. Ships were taking longer to deliver cargo. Some were getting lost. Completely. The routes are exactly the same, Chief Navigator Yelner insisted. His tentacles moved with worry as he spoke. We are using the same star charts, the same navigation computers. Nothing has changed. Then why are our ships so slow? Quintal asked. His voice was dangerous and quiet. Yelmer had no answer. Neither did anyone else on Altair Prime. They did not understand that humans had quietly improved every trade route in the galaxy. Captain Susan Wright had spent years mapping solar winds that could push ships faster. Captain Mike Torres had found shortcuts through asteroid fields that cut days off long journeys. But the humans had never written these discoveries in official reports. They had shared the knowledge with other humans through informal conversations and personal messages. Now that knowledge was gone, and the aliens were discovering how much they had depended on it. Captain Rexstar was learning this lesson the hard way. His merchant ship had been drifting in space for 2 days, trying to find a path through the Kepler Nebula. The human captains had always made this journey in hours. Rexstar had been traveling for a week and was barely halfway through. The humans lied to us, his first officer said nervously. They must have had secret technology, better engines or navigation systems. Rexstar wished that were true. Secret technology could be stolen or copied. But this was worse. The humans had simply been better at reading space itself. They understood how gravity worked between stars. They knew how to ride cosmic currents that other species could not even detect. The problems were getting worse everywhere. On Centauri Beta, the orbital defense platforms were failing one by one. Chief Engineer Polvac had been trying to fix them for weeks, but every repair attempt made things worse. These systems make no sense, he complained to Defense Coordinator Murphic. The humans designed them to change and adapt on their own. Every part talks to every other part in ways that are not documented anywhere. Can we not simply replace the broken components? Murphic asked. We tried that. When we replaced one component, 3 others stopped working. When we tried to fix those, the whole system crashed. The humans built this like a living creature, instead of a machine. Murphic felt cold fear in his chest. How long until the platforms completely fail? 2 weeks. Maybe less. Without the orbital platforms, Centauri Beta would be defenseless. 3 billion people lived on the planet. If pirates or raiders attacked, there would be no way to stop them. But pirates were not the biggest threat facing the galaxy. Long-range sensors had detected something much worse moving through the darkness between stars. The Void Reapers were coming back. The first attack came at Ross 128, a small colony world on the edge of Council space. The planet had 2 million inhabitants and a small defense fleet of 12 ships. When the Void Reaper dreadnoughts arrived, the colony sent out a desperate call for help. Fleet Admiral Kexlan commanded the nearest response force. He had 30 ships under his command, including some of the most advanced warships in the Altarian fleet. It should have been enough to drive off a few Void Reaper raiders. It was not enough. Kexlan watched his tactical display with growing horror as the enemy ships tore through his formation. The Void Reapers fought with precision and power. That seemed impossible. Their black ships moved like living things, anticipating every move his fleet made. Target their command ship, Kexlan ordered. All weapons, full power, 27 ships fired at once. The energy beams should have been enough to destroy any enemy vessel. But the Void Reaper dreadnought simply absorbed the attack and kept fighting. "Sir, they are not even damaged," his tactical officer reported in disbelief. Kexlan remembered the Battle of Kepler's Edge from 5 years ago. Commander Rachel Torres had faced a similar Void Reaper force with only 12 human ships. Everyone had expected her to lose. Instead, she had destroyed the entire enemy fleet without losing a single vessel. Rachel had used tactics that made no sense to conventional military thinking. She had split her force into 3 groups and attacked from different directions at the same time. She had used her weapons in ways that violated standard procedures. Her victory had seemed impossible until it happened. Now Kexlan faced the same enemy with more than twice as many ships, and he knew he was going to lose. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, 23 of Kexlan's ships had been destroyed. The survivors limped away while the Void Reapers continued toward their next target. Ross 128 was completely destroyed. 2 million people died in a single day. The same disaster happened at Wolf 359 3 days later. The Centauran Third Fleet tried to stop another Void Reaper force and was wiped out almost completely. Only 5 ships escaped out of 40-1. At Vega Station, the Rigel Defense Force lost 2 entire battle groups trying to protect the civilian population. The Void Reapers advanced with methodical precision, destroying everything in their path. In the council chambers, panic was spreading. Like a disease. "We must contact Earth immediately," Counselor Hextai declared. Her usual calm was completely gone. "The Void Reapers will reach Rigel Prime within a month." Council Leader Velthorn looked older than ever. "All our messages to Sol System are being ignored. We have sent diplomatic requests, emergency broadcasts, even personal appeals from individual council members. The humans will not respond." "Then we send a military force," suggested the Zephyrian delegate. "Make them negotiate." "With what military force?" Velthorn asked bitterly. "Half our combined fleets have been destroyed in the past month. And even if we had ships to spare, do you want to attack the humans? Have you forgotten what happened to the Hegemony War Fleet?" The reminder silenced the chamber. 5 years ago, the Hegemony had tried to conquer human space with 200 warships. Only 12 ships had returned, and their crews spoke of human weapons and tactics that seemed to break the laws of physics. But the military disasters were not the only problems facing the galaxy. The practical consequences of humanity's absence were becoming impossible to ignore. Dr. Yel Mora was one of the best scientists on Altair Prime. She had been trying for weeks to complete the cure for Zephyrian-scale rot that human researchers had abandoned. The disease was spreading rapidly, and thousands were dying every day. "I cannot understand their notes," she reported to her supervisor. "The humans encoded everything. The genetic sequences, the protein modifications, even the basic cellular repair techniques. It is all written in human biological notation. Can we not reverse engineer their work? Not without understanding how humans think about biology. They approach genetic science in ways that are completely different from ours. Their methods are so advanced that they might as well be magic." The same story was repeating across every field where humans had contributed. On Rigel 4, urban planning projects had stopped completely because human architects were the only ones who understood how to design cities for multiple alien species. On Vega Station, the hydroponic farms were dying because human agricultural specialists had been the only ones who knew how to maintain the complex ecosystem balance. Even simple maintenance tasks were becoming impossible. The Great Library on Centauri Alpha could not repair its data storage systems because human technicians had modified them using techniques that no one else understood. Billions of years of accumulated knowledge were at risk of being lost forever. President Martha Collins received daily reports about the galaxy's collapse from her office on Earth. Satellite networks monitored alien communications, intelligence. Services tracked the Void Reaper advance. Every day brought news of more disasters. "They are getting desperate," General Paul Watson observed. 5 more formal requests for negotiations this week alone. "Do they understand why we left?" Collins asked. "No. They still think this is some kind of bargaining strategy. They cannot comprehend that we simply do not want to be part of their civilization anymore." Collins walked to her window and looked up at the orbital construction platforms that ringed Earth. Humanity was building something incredible in Sol System, something that would make their old role in galactic affairs seem insignificant. "How long until Phase 2 is complete?" she asked. 3 months. "The automated systems are working even better than projected." Collins nodded. Phase 2 would change everything. When it was complete, humanity would no longer need the galaxy at all. They would have something better. But first, the Council would have to face the Void Reapers alone. And based on what had happened at Ross 128 and Wolf 359, they were not going to survive. The galaxy was about to learn the true cost of rejecting humanity. 6 months after humanity left, the Void Reapers reached the heart of Council space. Their black ships moved like a plague across the galaxy, destroying everything in their path. The combined fleets of 47 alien species gathered for what everyone knew would be the final battle. Fleet Admiral Kexland stood on the bridge of the massive command ship Eternal Harmony. Around him were the greatest military minds from every species in the Council. Their combined fleet had over 800 ships, the largest armada in galactic history. Kexland knew it would not be enough. "Enemy contact in 15 minutes, reported Fleet Coordinator Maxwell. "All battle groups report ready status." Kexland stared at the tactical display showing the approaching Void Reaper fleet. He had studied every battle report from the past 6 months. Ross 128, Wolf 359, Vega Station, and dozen other worlds. The pattern was always the same. The aliens fought bravely using conventional tactics, and the Void Reapers destroyed them with contemptuous ease. "Sir," his communications officer said. Nervously, "We are receiving another request from the Rigel High Command. They want to know if we have any new tactical information." Kexland almost laughed. New tactical information. As if anyone in the galaxy understood how to fight these monsters. The only species that had ever defeated the Void Reapers in battle was humanity, and the humans were gone. "Tell them we will follow standard battle doctrine," Kexland replied. Standard battle doctrine meant forming up in defensive formations, concentrating firepower, and trying to overwhelm the enemy through superior numbers. It was the same approach that had failed everywhere else, but it was all they knew. The Void Reapers attacked like a force of nature. Their ships moved in perfect coordination, striking at weak points in the alien formations with surgical precision. They seemed to know exactly what the Council fleets would do before they did it. Within the first hour, 200 alien ships had been destroyed. The Void Reapers had lost none. "How is this possible?" Maxwell whispered, watching his tactical display fill with red markers indicating destroyed vessels. Kexland remembered watching combat recordings of human battles against the Void Reapers. Commander Rachel Torres had split her small fleet into groups that attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. She had used weapons in ways that no military academy taught. Her ships had moved unpredictably, making it impossible for the enemy to anticipate their actions. The humans fought like they were dancing instead of following rigid battle plans. They adapted and improvised and changed tactics moment by moment. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos that somehow worked. Aliens could not replicate that kind of thinking. They had been trained to follow procedures and protocols. When those procedures failed, they had no idea what to do next. All ships, fall back to secondary positions, Kexlan ordered, but he knew it was hopeless. The Void Reapers would simply follow and destroy them there too. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, less than 50 alien ships remained out of 800. The Void Reapers continued their advance toward the Council homeworlds, barely slowed by the massive fleet that had tried to stop them. In the Council chambers, the surviving leaders faced the end of their civilization. Emergency sessions had been called every day for weeks, but no one had any solutions. "We must surrender," declared Councillor Yextar of the Vegan Assembly. "At least some of our people might survive if we offer no further resistance." "Surrender to what?" Vel Thorn asked wearily. "The Void Reapers do not take prisoners. They do not negotiate. They simply destroy everything they encounter." "Then what do you suggest?" Hexdai demanded. "Our fleets are gone. Our defenses are failing. The humans will not answer our calls." Velthorn stared at the holographic display showing Void Reaper positions across the galaxy. They were less than 2 weeks away from reaching Altair Prime, Centauri Beta, and the other major Council worlds. Billions would die, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "we should have listened to the humans when they tried to warn us about this threat 3 years ago." The chamber fell silent. Everyone remembered that meeting. Ambassador Jake Miller had presented intelligence about Void Reaper movements in the Outer Rim. He had suggested joint military exercises and shared defense strategies. The Council had dismissed his concerns as human paranoia and aggression. "The humans always knew this day would come," Velthorn continued. "They tried to prepare us for it. We refused to listen." Meanwhile, the practical collapse of galactic civilization continued to accelerate. Without human maintenance, critical systems were failing everywhere. The great communication network that connected thousands of worlds was breaking down piece by piece. Ships were getting lost in hyperspace because the navigation beacons humans had installed were no longer being maintained. On Centauri Beta, Chief Medical Officer Polanth watched helplessly as patients died from diseases that should have been easily treatable. The human-designed medical equipment in his hospital had started malfunctioning weeks ago. Every attempt to repair it had made things worse. "The human doctors must have hidden safety protocols," he told his staff. "Nothing we do seems to work properly." What Polanth did not understand was that Dr. Ryan Blake had designed the medical systems to learn and adapt to new situations. They were not just machines, but artificial intelligences that could diagnose and treat conditions that had never been seen before. But they required a human understanding of biology and medicine to function properly. Without that understanding, the systems were slowly degrading into USELESSNESS. The same thing was happening with food production across the galaxy. Human agricultural specialists had developed farming techniques that could feed billions of people efficiently. But those techniques required constant adjustment and innovation to deal with changing conditions. Alien farmers tried to follow the procedures the humans had left behind, but they could not adapt when things went wrong. Crop yields were dropping rapidly. Food shortages were becoming common on worlds that had not known hunger for decades. On Rigel 4, the capital city was literally falling apart. Human architects had designed the massive urban complex to house 50 million inhabitants from 12 different species. But the structural systems they had created were too complex for alien engineers to maintain. Building foundations were shifting. Transportation networks were failing. The environmental control systems that kept the air breathable for different species were breaking down. "We need the human architects back," City Planner Mexivon reported to the planetary government. "Without their knowledge, the entire city will become uninhabitable within months." But the humans were not coming back. Every message sent to Sol System went unanswered. Every diplomatic attempt to re-establish contact was ignored. President Martha Collins read the latest intelligence reports in her office on Earth. The galaxy was collapsing faster than even the most pessimistic projections had predicted. The Void Reapers were less than 2 weeks away from reaching the major council worlds. Any change in their communications? She asked General Watson. They are getting more desperate. Yesterday, we intercepted a message from Vel Thorne personally, apologizing for the Council's treatment of humanity. He is begging us to help. And our response? None. As instructed? Collins nodded and walked to her window. In the space around Earth, construction continued on the massive project that would define humanity's future. Orbital platforms stretched as far as the eye could see. Automated factories worked around the clock, building something that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. How is Phase 2 progressing? She asked. Ahead of schedule. And new ships are performing beyond all expectations. We could begin field tests next week if needed. Collins smiled. I think field tests will be necessary very soon. In deep space, sensors detected something that should have been impossible. A single ship was approaching from the direction of Sol System. It was massive, larger than any vessel in the galactic databases. Its design was completely unknown. The ship moved through space in ways that violated everything the galaxy knew about physics. It appeared in multiple locations simultaneously. It traveled faster than light without using conventional hyperspace technology. The Council detected the ship first and sent a desperate message on all frequencies. Unknown vessel. This is Council Leader Val Thorne. Please identify yourself. We are facing a catastrophic threat and desperately need assistance. The response came immediately, broadcast in perfect high galactic with an unmistakably human accent. This is Admiral Jennifer Clark of the Earth vessel Prometheus Rising. Council forces, withdraw to minimum safe distance immediately. In the Council chambers, hope flared for the first time in months. Admiral Clark had been humanity's liaison to the Council Defense Force before the Exodus. She had been a quiet, competent officer who had never commanded anything larger than a destroyer. Admiral Clark, Val Thorne transmitted, his voice shaking with relief. We have been trying to contact Earth for months. The Void Reapers are destroying everything. We need your help. The Void Reapers are no longer your concern, Clark replied calmly. Withdraw to minimum safe distance. This will be over shortly. The aliens stared at their displays in confusion. The Void Reaper fleet hung in space like a cloud of death. 15 massive dreadnoughts that had just destroyed the greatest armada in galactic history. Their black hulls absorbed light, making them look like holes cut in the stars themselves. Against them stood a single human ship. The Prometheus Rising was 3 times larger than the biggest Council dreadnought, but size alone could not explain what happened next. Admiral Jennifer Clark had been a quiet officer who commanded small patrol ships. Now she faced an enemy that had crushed entire fleets. Fleet Admiral Kexlin watched from his damaged command ship as the human vessel approached the Void Reapers. He expected to witness another massacre. Instead, he saw something that would be talked about for the next 1,000 years. The Prometheus Rising did not fire conventional weapons. It did not launch missiles or energy beams. Instead, it projected fields of pure force that made reality itself bend and twist. The first Void Reaper dreadnought simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a kilometer-long engine of destruction. The next moment, it was empty space where it had been. What just happened? Mexivol whispered. Kex single quotes land had no answer. The human ship had not fired anything visible. It had simply looked at the enemy vessel, and the enemy vessel had vanished. The second Void Reaper dreadnought tried to fight back. It fired its most powerful weapons at the human ship. Beams of energy that could crack planets struck the Prometheus, rising and simply disappeared, absorbed by shields that seemed to be made of folded space. The human ship moved in response, but it did not move the way ships were supposed to move. It appeared in 3 different locations at the same time, attacking from angles the geometry said were impossible. 3 more Void Reaper ships ceased to exist in the span of seconds. The remaining enemy vessels tried to retreat, but there was nowhere to run. The human ship was everywhere at once, surrounding them with copies of itself that all seemed equally real. "How many ships are there?" someone asked over the communications channel. "1," Admiral Clark's voice replied calmly. "You are seeing 1 ship from multiple dimensional perspectives simultaneously." The words meant nothing to the alien observers, but the results were clear. The entire Void Reaper invasion fleet was being systematically erased from existence by a single human vessel using technology that should not have been possible. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, the space around Council territory was empty except for the alien survivors and the human ship. 15 Void Reaper dreadnoughts had been reduced to nothing. Not destroyed or damaged, but completely removed from reality as if they had never existed. "How?" was all Council leader Val Thorne could manage to say when he finally found his voice. Admiral Clark's response was patient, almost gentle. "We spent 9 months working on problems that actually mattered, instead of arguing about voting procedures and expansion permits. When humans do not have to waste time on political theater, we tend to accomplish things efficiently." The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. While the galaxy had stumbled through crisis after crisis, humanity had been developing technology that made their previous achievements look like children's toys. "Admiral," Val Thorne said carefully, "we realized that mistakes were made. Perhaps we could discuss resuming diplomatic relations." "The galaxy clearly needs—" "There is nothing to discuss," Clark interrupted. "The Council made its position very clear 9 months ago. You found humanity too aggressive, too primitive, too dangerous to participate in galactic civilization. We listened to your concerns and acted accordingly. But surely you understand that circumstances have changed. The galaxy faces threats that require. The galaxy needs to learn to solve its own problems," Clark said firmly. "For 10,000 years, the Council has maintained order through rigid adherence to established protocols. When something new emerged, when humans brought different ways of thinking, your first instinct was to suppress it rather than learn from it." Val Thorne felt the weight of truth in those words. The Council had always feared change. They had built their civilization on the principle that stability was more important than growth. When humanity had offered new ideas and new approaches, the Council had seen them as threats to the existing order. "What happens now?" asked Counselor X-Tai quietly. "Now you decide what kind of civilization you want to be," Clark replied. "Humanity has chosen our path. We are building something new in Sol System, something that does not require the approval or participation of species that view innovation as a threat. And if the galaxy faces another crisis like this one..." There was a long pause before Clark answered. "Learn to handle it yourselves. Grow, adapt, change, become something more than you are now. Or do not. The choice is yours to make." The transmission ended, and the human ship simply vanished. Not through hyperspace or any conventional faster-than-light travel, but through some technology that folded space itself. In the months that followed, the Council began the slow process of rebuilding their shattered civilization. But they did so with the knowledge that humanity had moved far beyond them, had become something greater, while they had remained trapped in the patterns of the past. Trade routes were eventually re-established, though they were slower and less efficient than before. Agricultural techniques were painfully redeveloped from basic principles. Medical research progressed at a fraction of its former pace. The galaxy functioned, but it was a shadow of what it had been with human participation. Doctor Yelmora finally gave up trying to complete the cure for Zephyrian scale rot. Without human biological knowledge, the project was impossible. Thousands continued to die from a disease that could have been eliminated. Chief Engineer Polvac abandoned his attempts to repair the orbital defense platforms around Centauri Beta. The planet would have to rely on conventional defenses that were far less effective than what the humans had built. City Planner Mexivon watched sections of Rigel IV's capital city be evacuated as structural systems continued to fail. Millions of inhabitants had to relocate to smaller settlements that could be maintained with existing alien engineering knowledge. Everywhere, the galaxy learned to live with less efficiency, less innovation, less capability. They had chosen stability over growth, and now they had to accept the consequences of that choice. On Earth, President Martha Collins stood in the command center of humanity's greatest achievement. Around her, holographic displays showed the completion of Phase 2. Sol System had been transformed into something that would have seemed like magic to the aliens who had rejected humanity. Massive orbital habitats housed billions of humans in perfect comfort. Automated factories produced technologies that surpassed anything the galaxy had ever imagined. Exploration ships prepared to venture beyond the galactic rim, searching for new frontiers that had never been touched by the councils. Rigid thinking. Any regrets about leaving? General Watson asked. Collins smiled as she watched human children playing in parks that floated in space, breathing air that had been created from pure energy, living lives that were richer and more fulfilling than anything possible under the Council's limitations. None at all, she replied. We gave them every chance to accept us as partners. They chose to see us as threats instead. Now they can live with that decision. In deep space, automated monitoring stations detected the approach of human exploration. Fleets heading for distant galaxies. Humanity was moving beyond the boundaries of Council space entirely, seeking new challenges and new opportunities among the stars. The galaxy they left behind struggled to maintain what they had built with human help. Some species learned to adapt and innovate on their own. Others remained locked in the old patterns, slowly declining as their rigid thinking failed to meet new challenges. But in Sol System, humanity thrived. They had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the greatest act of strength is walking away from those who cannot recognize your worth. The Council was left with their regret, their diminished capabilities, and the knowledge that they had driven away the one species that could have helped them reach heights they had never imagined. Humanity had departed quietly, just as Ambassador Jake Miller had promised. The galaxy would spend the next 1,000 years learning to live with the silence they had chosen over the voices of innovation and change. In the end, the humans had given the aliens exactly what they had asked for: a galaxy without human interference, human aggression, or human innovation. The Council had gotten their wish. They would regret it forever.